Sick Harrison Price for Wednesday, June 18th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. And this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sick Harrison alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogers, and Hitting Switches conducting things. The BC Lions brought in s'mores. Thank you to everyone with the Lions. And I am doing my utmost not to devour it. Because s'mores
Have you not had any of it yet?
No, and I don't plan to, because s'mores is not an appropriate breakfast, is it? I haven't had breakfast.
No, neither have I,
But you're going to have at her. Okay.
it's pretty good.
There you go. I mean, how do you...
It's like ginger bears.
S'mores. Matt Baker, you're killing me here. Trying to avoid sweets.
That is just sugar in different forms. It's a backyard barbecue day.
Yeah, indeed. Big show coming up for you as we are now down to just two hockey teams. The Abbotsford Canucks and the Charlotte Checkers. They're the only ones happening now. And we'll get to them in a minute, as well as the Stanley Cup final. And, of course, it concludes. We start with our Whistler Golf Club poll question. Which Stanley Cup free agent would most benefit the Canucks? Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand. Blake, go.
If we're just talking general style of play, the answer is yes. They could probably do with both. And ultimately both play similar style, but if we're going to suggest that Bennett is going to be double the price of Marchand and double the tenure of Marchand, then I'm going to say the Rat and Brad Marchand.
You have a right to be wrong. The answer is Sam Bennett. They need a center iceman. He is one. Okay, he's not the quintessential second-line centerman in terms of scoring. But we were talking earlier this week about, good mixes with Elias. You come with Elias on your first line or one of your lines, and then Sam Bennett on the next one at center ice. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a really good defensive duo in that spot. Okay, you may have to win ugly. You may have to win low-scoring games. And I got to say, when we started these playoffs with Sam Bennett as a looming free agent, look, I liked Florida to go far, and as they were taking the steps, I think it's clear that he was making the money. I still remain somewhat skeptical, both of the price tag and whether someone should just go crazy and offer him a lot of money. But this cap is going up. It's going to be hyper-competitive to land talent going forward. Like, I'm not sure the value of draft picks are going to be what they were with the League Awash in cap space. And I think it's going to cost more and more to acquire these sorts of players via trade. And so, look, if, again, at some point I think the Canucks really should entertain a proper rebuild. You look at a cup champion again last night with a first and a second overall pick.
But the argument, the opposite argument is being made about this Panthers team. This has nothing to do with the rebuild. It is a fully trade-built team. That's the argument.
Except for Barkov and Ekblad.
But Ekblad playing a almost nothing role on the team through the 82 games, and Barkov is one drafted player. Okay, one drafted player.
Well, they're first-line centerman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the best two-way forward in the game. No. Like just about every Stanley Cup champion, Vegas accepted, of course, because of the expansion process, this is also a team that drafted and developed high picks who became significant players on their club.
You look at any club, and there's a top 5 drafted player on that team. Pretty much. I mean, I would bet almost to a team that is true.
I'm not saying that is the only part of the formula, and you're right. The trades that Bill Zito made were extremely wise and helped construct this now 2-time champion. And, of course, he's got the benefit of being in a tax-free jurisdiction. But, look, if the Canucks are all in on next season and keeping Quinn Hughes and making the playoffs, go throw stupid money at Sam Bennett. No, outbid everybody else and force him to turn you down.
See, I am of the opinion, too, that these chickens will come home to roost. I would throw every penny I have on the Florida Panthers not getting past the second round next year.
Really?
Wow. 3 straight visits to the Stanley Cup final. Eventually, chickens come home to roost on the wear and tear on a human's body, and this will be the year they just can't do it. Not because they won't be a good team intrinsically. They will have played a full season more than a team that's missed the playoffs over the course of the last 3 seasons. That's just too much hockey. We've already seen, hints now at load management in the National Hockey League. Never mind playing a full season's more worth of hockey, and the guys that have played 4 Nations, the guys that will play Olympics next year. It's too much hockey. Sam Bennett will be roasted next year. Mark my words. If you sign Sam Bennett, you're signing him for 2 years from now, not for next year. Well, I guess you're signing him for 1 year.
You're signing him for 7 years.
No, but I mean,
that's what he's going to get if he's leaving Florida.
He's not going to give you his best until a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be roasted.
Okay, well.
So you got to be patient. You got to be arcing in that direction that you're okay for a good year. I'm sure he'll be good, but he won't be able to be his best.
But you're choosing the you're choosing the 37-year-old.
Short-term fix. You might be able to get him on a 2-year deal.
No. He's going to get 3.
I don't know.
You ought to get like 3 at 8.5 or something like that.
We'll see.
I think the bidding's going to get crazy on July 1st this year.
Hey, there's not a lot of action. There's not a lot of action. You got to create, and again, this is what Florida did well. Like, I would never have advised to go get Seth Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Everything I've read, and I don't watch a lot of Chicago Blackhawks hockey, I was told he was terrible.
Right. One of the worst contracts in the NHL, and his heart wasn't into it.
They acquire him, and all of a sudden he's the top 4 defenseman again. So, those are the kinds of deals that really paid off. You get a guy off waivers, turns out to be Gustav Forsling.
Yeah. Just getting back to this rebuild and draft and top 5 picks. So Florida bottomed out. Colorado bottomed out. Tampa bottomed out. St. Louis maybe not as much, but, I mean, you still had Pietrangelo and others there. Most of the Cup winners in the Cap era had been teams that had bottomed out, gotten top 5 picks, and then developed them into star players and built around that.
Well, in Florida's case, what they did is they got those top picks and then traded those top picks. That's what they weaponized their top picks. Again, they're only using a couple, and they were bad for a long time.
So the top picks they traded were Spencer Knight, 13th overall in 2019 in the Seth Jones trade. Owen Tippett, 10th overall in 2017, sent him to Philadelphia. Lawson Krause was their top pick in 2015. Of course, has been with Arizona and now Utah. I guess you can all the way back to 2012 and Mike Matheson, who they drafted with their first-round pick. Huberdeau, of course, as part of the Calgary Flames deal for Tkachuk. Good Branson here but McCann didn't last long there. Okay, I'm not saying, but I think that also stands to reason that most Cup teams you will probably find a few guys acquired via a wise trade.
Yeah, I think this.
I guess what I'm asking
this seems to be more.
You think you can trade your way to a cup?
I'm saying that's
or there's got to be some degree of top 5 accrued talent in the draft, no? Or top 10?
Well, yeah, but I just don't think this is certainly is not any more than the usual. I would say this is average at best in terms of the number of guys that they have brought to the table via the draft.
Anyways, you can vote for Bennett. You can vote for Marchand. Do so at the Secure Some Price X and YouTube channels. And the daily poll question brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club, now open for the 2025 season. The Bears might even tend the flag for you. Huge bear activity up in Whistler at Whistler Golf on social to follow all of that. You can book your tee times for any time during the 2025 season right now online. Get them locked in. And if you have a group of 12 or more, ask about the Secure Some Price midweek special. Take great care of you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Groups of 12 or more. WhistlerGolf.com/groups. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Panthers win the Cup, defeat Edmonton in 6 games on home ice to take the rematch of the final and repeat as NHL champions. West Vancouver, Sam Reinhart, the hero with 4 goals in a 5-1 victory. And Sam Bennett wins the Conn Smythe after leading the playoffs with 15 goals. Our old friend Roberto Luongo, now a 2-time Stanley Cup champion as an executive. Blake, he did a post-game interview on ice amid the celebration with Corey Schneider, his one-time stablemate in the Canucks crease. Corey working for NHL Network. I got to say, it hit pretty hard. Seeing those two faces amidst all the revelry around them. Stanley Cup a few meters away. Oh, it could have been 2011, thing 1, thing 2. They were such a fantastic duo in goal and off the ice. Loads of fun. Luongo also had to suffer Brad Marchand to win this one, but he did bite back on X with a classic Strombone tweet. Picture of the two of them, caption, champion, and of course champion misspelled because that's the tattoo that Marchand got after his previous Cup victory,
which was also misspelled. Yeah, callbacks that you need to be reminded of. That's how good a
that's
callback
right. That's
they are.
Exactly.
He's
pretty sharp.
Yeah,
pretty witty. Luongo was interviewed on the ice with Gene Principe. I love Vancouver too. Brad, we had our battles. That was 15 years ago. We have to be able to move on. He's a great player and even better teammate. We're just happy to have him on our team. We saw what he did on this run. He was a huge add to our team. No question about
Matt,
it.
I just read an article here. This is from Wyshynski. Why the Florida Panthers are the nicest rats to ever win the Stanley Cup twice. They're full of rats. They are. But... yeah. Everybody thinks they're pretty funny and fun, and by all accounts, it was. And who are they talking to? They're talking to Nate Schmidt about what it was like when he walked into that dressing room. Mm-hmm. And he said that it was the most welcoming dressing room he's ever been into his entire life. He said 1 minute in that dressing room felt like he had been there for 10 years. He said Sasha Barkov is a magnetic leader. You immediately want to win for your captain.
Did you see the cut on his hand? The slice?
He's been battling this since like the opening round, I think.
Oh, wow.
Had to glue it shut eventually after it kept on reopening.
I can imagine.
Kept on going through sutures.
I don't know how you play hockey with that thing.
And we've had so many bacterial infections for players because the dressing rooms are not the cleanest places.
Well, neither's the inside of a hockey gauntlet.
No, pretty tough to get fully clean of all bacteria, and yet he was able to stave that off. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows? He might have been on a steady course of antibiotics through the 2 months. We'll see. But
how does he do with knee tendonitis, Blake?
I saw that rhetoric around. All these guys, the ripped adductor muscle for Matthew Tkachuk.
Off the bone.
But tendonitis is...
Mm-hmm. A lot of work to do. This drove me crazy. So Bettman drives me crazy on his best days.
Yes.
But how he constantly equates, and he did this with Anaheim, he did this with Tampa, he did this with Vegas, how he constantly equates winning a Stanley Cup with They said hockey wouldn't work in South Florida. Gary, what did it look like when they weren't Cup champions? Because it wasn't working. You not only had crickets in the building, you didn't even have a television audience to fill up the rink.
Well, 2 words: Florida Marlins. Like they've had some success too.
No, but there was not long ago the Panthers were playing to like 7,000-8,000 people in the stands, and there was like maybe 10,000 to 15,000 watching in the whole region.
Florida's not a great sports market.
No, it's not. So there was not only that, and then he went on to say, winning the Stanley Cup, the hardest trophy to win, but winning it 2 years in a row is nearly impossible. That was the 3rd back-to-back winner of the Cup in the last 9 years. Tampa, 2021, Pittsburgh, 16-17, and now Florida.
Tampa's
24-25.
Tampa's got an asterisk. They didn't play the full 82 games in either Cup.
Nearly impossible. You've had more teams in the last decade repeat as Cup champions.
Well,
okay.
I mean, it brings up what I saw Thomas Drance from The Athletic talking about, and the parity in the NHL these days.
Is there parity?
There
is during the regular season with 3-point games, Blake, but
once you get there, 2 teams have won the East since 2020. 4 teams have made the conference final in the West, 5 teams in the East. Like, it's been 9 teams having playoff success in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
9 teams. By contrast, in the NBA over the same time frame, 14 different teams have made the conference final in the NBA since 2020. 10 different teams have made the final. So 50% better in the NBA in terms of parity.
Yeah.
And we never thought, how many times have we ranted? We never thought parity would ever return to the NBA because it was just about going to the markets that would give you the best endorsements and the best opportunities.
No, and also stars getting together to play together.
Right. Orchestrating it themselves.
Orchestrated teams.
But they weren't going to exactly orchestrate themselves into a power trio in Minnesota. You knew that if they were going to orchestrate a power trio, it would be in New York, Miami, or LA.
Even this week, there are all these reports. Minnesota's very interested in Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is not interested in Minnesota.
Right. But Minnesota still had playoff success.
Giannis won his title in Milwaukee. Now it looks like he's going to be on the move. So remember that when we get to February, and we start talking about teams that are on the playoff cusp and whether they should be buyers at the deadline, and the notion, and we talked about it a lot this year with the Canucks, given where they were positioned, do you believe in just get in and anything can happen? No. Anything can't happen. If anything means winning a round, okay. If anything means winning 2 rounds, okay. If anything means winning 3 rounds, a conference championship, which is a successful season, and you're satisfied with that, fill your boots. But anything can't happen when you're talking about 4 series victories and lifting that chalice. Those teams show themselves. Those teams aren't typically fighting to get into the playoffs in February. I know you can give me the 19 Blues and the, 2012 Kings. Those teams were on exceptional heaters from December onwards after playing a poor first couple of months of the year, which is what resided them in the positions that they were in terms of playoff seeding. But, those are the aberrations. Those are the exceptions. Those aren't the rules. And so that should inform your team construction.
And we often see playoff savvy teams that have been at the top sink one year and become a 6, 7, or 8 seed.
Tampa.
Yeah. Well, the Canucks in '94 were kind of one of those. They'd sunk lower than they were, way lower than they were the previous year, but it's not like they had forgotten how to win.
Chicago in 2011 was the 8th seed as the defending Cup champ, remember? And the Canucks drew them in the first round.
Yeah.
So Florida also becomes the 5th winner from a tax-free jurisdiction in the last 6 years, but, Gary will tell you nothing to see here. They extract more value out of the cap. It's a mathematical fact, but nothing to see here. And the Canadian drought is now up to 32 years and counting. 32-team league now, 32 years and counting.
Wow.
This from Ben Raby in Washington. Since 1990, only 3 teams have won as much as the Panthers have in a 4-year span. The Red Wings from 95 to 98, they won 2 cups, 2 President's Trophies, 3 conference championships. The Lightning from 19 to 22, they won 2 cups, 3 conference championships, and a President's Trophy. And then this Florida run from 22 to 25, 2 cups, 3 conference championships, and a President's Trophy. Which brings me to the question, because Matthew Tkachuk said, you got to call us a dynasty now. Do you consider them a dynasty?
Yeah, absolutely. In modern,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. You're not going to see 4 straight anymore in professional sports. Like, you're not.
What about 4 and 5 or 3 and 4?
3 and 4 is a possibility. I could see that happening potentially, but that, I mean, I'm not going to say never there, but it could be a long time. So and now I want to, if they were bounced in the first year 2 years ago and they just had these back-to-back cup wins, I would be less inclined to say yes.
But getting to that cup final and losing to Vegas,
yes, yeah, that adds to it.
I'm not as strong on it as you are. To me, they're right on the edge. Like, just when I utter the phrase dynasty, I'm thinking about more than 2.
Well, that traditionally has been true.
Yeah.
Back in the non-cap eras of sports.
Fair enough. And so I'm sort of having the internal debate. Do I need to adjust for the cap or not?
Although I had a coffee table baseball book that I don't know when it was published, but it was Baseball's Dynasties. I loved it. Great color photos.
Yes.
Big freaking coffee table book.
The Blue Jays one?
The Blue Jays were in there.
Oh, okay.
2 years. They were in there.
Yeah. It was in an era when much fewer teams made the playoffs, right? So you had to have great regular seasons.
Well, I think also how star-studded they were probably also brought that about.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, to me, that this is about as dominant as you're going to be able to be. And as I said, I think the chickens come home to roost. I think they're going to be in tough. Wouldn't be surprised if they're the last guys to get into the East. And, again, you wouldn't want to face them.
No. Well, especially if Bennett and Marchand resign.
Yeah.
Edmonton falls short again. That's 2 in a row and now 3 cup losses since their last win in 1990.
They lead the Canadian 7 in that regard.
They do, both in appearances and in victory since they entered the National Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Perry has lost 5 straight cup finals over a 6-year period, and unbelievably, that only ties the record. Brian Propp lost 5 straight cup finals, albeit over 11 years.
Yes, less concentrated.
Yes. Propp with Philadelphia, Boston, and Minnesota. But hey, at least Corey Perry got to shake Paul Maurice's hand. You saw Coach Maurice join the handshake line. I didn't see this, but I read that he went to go over to Knobloch, but Knobloch had already joined the line. So I don't know if that was conscious from Chris Knobloch. I don't know if that was just routine. Oh, this is what you do when you lose. But anyways, Maurice was in the handshake line.
Not to give Paul Maurice an out, but I think in the Cup final that maybe different rules apply too.
Really?
That's the end of the line. I don't mind the hypocrisy, if you will, there for Paul Maurice joining the line all of a sudden. At the Cup final, I think it might be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But as for Perry, boy, this makes Marian Hossa look...
Takes him off the hook.
Yeah, was it 3 in a row for Hossa? 3 years in a row he was on the losing team? I think that's what it was. I want to say something to that.
Well, it was effect. He was on the wrong side of the Detroit-Pittsburgh do-si-do those 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't remember it being 3, though. We can look that up. He did eventually, of course,
get
it in Chicago. But, I mean, he went cup shopping to a degree, which is kind of what Corey Perry is doing, too.
Yeah. And hey, I will give him this. He's been way more effective.
Oh,
than
he was
I ever
way
would have
better.
dreamed.
Honestly, Blake, as I sat here and watched this Edmonton team, and especially after the Hyman injury, who's going to score for this team if it wasn't 97 and Draisaitl?
Yeah.
And it turns out it was Corey Perry.
You don't make him feel better? Tepache. Neighborhood Brewing's released a Be Cool Pineapple Tepache. It's a funky little number. Tart, tropical refresher. Inspired by the traditional Mexican tepache, bursting with juicy pineapple, a hint of cinnamon for some warmth. Be Cool, laid back brew with the crisp and tangy finish that hits just right. So check it out from Neighborhood, the Be Cool Pineapple Tepache.
Abbotsford wins Game 3, 6-1 before a festive crowd of 7,000 plus at Abbey Centre. They take a 2-1 series lead in the Calder Cup final over Charlotte. The Linus Karlsson story continues. A goal and 3 helpers for a 4-point night. It was 1-1 early in the third period. Abbotsford gives up the first goal of this hockey game and then scores 6 straight, but it takes them a while to get going.
Yeah. Not your traditional blowout.
No. Karlsson scores early in the third to make it 2-1. Turns out to be the game-winning goal. He was already leading the AHL playoffs in goals. He's now up to 11, and he's now leading in points up to 22. Tied for the playoff lead with 3 game-winning goals. This is a young man who took a very big step in his career this year. He was getting praise from Rick Tocchet during the season, and really without a lot of bottom line. In fact, with no bottom line. And for a moment there, we were all thinking, I remember we did a show with Jeff where we were sort of like, okay, I think I've seen enough of Linus Karlsson. No more Linus Karlsson. You've got other young forwards up there, call him up. But Tocchet had praised him and seemed to go out of his way to praise him a couple of times about little things he was doing, board work, net front presence, things like that. And we wondered, okay, is Rick just being kind to a young guy? Well, no, I think Coach Tocchet was on to something. And, of course, by the end of the season, Linus Karlsson was playing pretty well for these Canucks. Let's hear from him on all his playoff success.
I play with good players, for sure. That's helped me. I just try to find, I always say that, I try to find the soft areas around the net, and that's where the goals ends up, So I probably score all my goals in the same spots. I'm just trying to be there, try to be around the net.
And he shouldn't apologize for that. That could be of use for the Vancouver Canucks. And he has shown what you want to see with a prospect is progression, is the learning. So he's 2/3 of a point per game 2 years ago with the Abbey Canucks. Last year he's on a point per game, exactly 60 and 60. And this year he's a fair amount above a point per game with the Abbotsford Canucks in the regular season, and then this marvelous playoff run. Mm-hmm. He will be 26 at the beginning of the year.
He will.
So he's you have to believe this is probably in terms of his development. You're getting him at his high right now. The Canucks need to give him a medium-sized leash at the start of next season. Not a short one. They don't have to wait till January before they make a decision either, I don't think. But I think they need to give him a medium-sized leash, see if he can learn the NHL speed quickly enough. And he's had enough little cups of coffee. He played 23 games this year for the Vancouver Canucks. There's a potential there for something. He goes to the tough areas, and the Canucks are going to need a surprise goal scorer next year. If they're going to have success next year, they're going to need somebody like that to help out. And maybe he's the guy.
You know what else he could do if he becomes a fixture in the Canucks lineup?
What's that?
Redeem the Alex Burrows trade.
Yeah.
Does everybody remember that Linus Karlsson is the product of the Alex Burrows trade tree? We will remember February 27th, 2017 for a long time on this program. Why? That was the day where the Vancouver Canucks finally succumbed to a rebuild. After getting within a game of winning the Stanley Cup in 2011, as we know, the Canucks were bounced in the first round in the subsequent 2 years. They got back to the playoffs in 2015. It turned out to be a mirage. And in 2017, with president of hockey operations Trevor Linden leading the charge, they finally decided, okay, Hank and Danny are at the ends now, and it is time to get this team younger. They traded Alex Burrows to the Ottawa Senators, and many people thought the Canucks had fleeced the Sens in that deal because they got back Jonathan Dahlin, a good Swedish forward prospect, of course, the son of former NHLer Ulf Dahlin. And Jonathan Dahlin had been a teammate and a friend of Elias Pettersson. Remember that? They had a ton of chemistry as young kids coming up in the Swedish ranks. Well, a couple of years later, Jonathan Dahlin was not very happy with his role in Utica, requested a trade, was moved right at the deadline. And as I recall, Blake, I think that was one of the last trades of that deadline day. If I'm not mistaken, that thing came in just under the wire, like one of those trades where it's 12 o'clock, but all the trades maybe haven't already been announced yet. They're processing. They're in line at Central Registry. And the Canucks traded Jonathan Dahlin for Linus Karlsson to the San Jose Sharks, basically because they just wanted the young man out of the room. He wasn't happy. They didn't want to keep him there against his will. So they traded him just for give us something.
And that something was Linus Karlsson.
Yeah.
And a small aside of there, Jonathan Dahlin, after the pandemic seasons, did eventually make his debut with the San Jose Sharks.
Yes.
And went on a preseason ripper and then extended into the late fall.
Yeah, he started the season great, if I'm not mistaken.
He was leading the team in goals out of the gate.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
and then
completely
fell
bottomed
off the map.
The bottom dropped out. He finished 12 goals and 10 assists, which doesn't seem that terrible when you just read it. But most of those were before December the 1st.
And then he was right back in Sweden the next year playing professionally. Those were the only 61 NHL games he's played.
Yeah. Very strange career.
Very strange career.
And Linus Karlsson might author a strange one because when's the last time? There used to be late bloomers. I remember Jason Blake had a big season at like 28 or something like that.
Brian Rafalski after going to Finland and coming back.
Yes. Goalies still happens. But position players, it doesn't. We haven't seen a late bloomer. This would be, in the modern era, and it's sort of the last 15 years, this would be a late bloomer if Linus Karlsson turns out to be something.
Do you remember after that Dahlin Burrows trade? And of course, there was another trade that week as well. Jannik Hansen was dealt to the San Jose Sharks. Do you remember Trevor started to use the word rebuild? Remember, they were not even like they were allergic to the word.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, we had Trevor on that day, and we're like, doesn't it feel good? Like a weight's been lifted off your shoulder. And I can remember Ferraro coming on with us like the day after and going, guys, that was fundamentally the happiest day for Canuck Nation since 2011. Everybody was on board with a Vancouver Canucks rebuild in that final week of February 2017, except one guy.
And that was the last interview Trevor Linden did as a member of the Vancouver Canucks.
No, he did some more, but yes. That was that.
Not many
vision, his vision for the franchise was not shared by the owner. Yes, it was Jannik Hansen for a young Russian forward prospect. Nikolai Goldobin. And poor Jannik, it didn't work out in San Jose.
No.
Yeah. Steve Bains, he had 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points last night for the Abbotsford Canucks. Bains is now into a share of second in AHL playoff scoring at 19 points. And that's remarkable because, of course, he was on that 16-game goalless drought. Couldn't buy a goal early in the Calder Cup playoffs. He's gotten better and better as the tournament has gone along. He was Abbotsford's best player last year, an all-star, earned himself some NHL duty, got some more NHL duty this past season. We said it from the outset. If they're going to make this run, Arshdeep has to be part of the solution, and the young man from Surrey is stepping up when they need him most. So good on him. Still a prospect there too, right? I know he's had a couple of tiny failed bids, but it still behooves the Canucks to see what kind of playoff run Summer Arshdeep can have and whether or not he can be a factor on next year's
And by contrast, almost a year and a half younger than Linus Karlsson.
Yeah. even after being a CHL free agent.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's Artie. Arturs Shilov stops 28 of 29. He gets an assist, too. He's 14-6 in the playoffs. He's allowed 7 goals on 125 shots in this series, so the save percentage is riding at 94%. It's just 3 games. But he continues to impress. He continues to play well in high-stakes games, and we've now seen that at 3 different levels for Shilovs. The World Championships, the Senior Men's World Championships for Latvia, the Stanley Cup playoffs last year where he did reasonably well as the 3rd emergency goaltender thrown into that series against Nashville and then Edmonton, and now at the HL playoff level. So,
and he could be staring down the very best in the world in the Olympics in a few months' time, too.
Oh, yeah, could. What's the Calder Cup playoff MVP?
What's it called?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Looking that up. The Jack Butterfield Trophy.
Oh, Jack.
AHL playoff MVP. Anyways, he's a candidate. And this from Cody Severson of Canucks Army. Speaking of prospects, Kirill Kudryavtsev, of course, the young Russian defenseman who has grown by leaps and bounds for the Canucks since they selected him in the 7th round. Actually made his NHL debut this year. First professional season. So, Mike, do we have it? There we go.
5-on-5, 17 goals for, 3 against.
Right.
All situations, 25 goals for, and still just those 3 against.
That's in this series, or that's in the...
No, that's in the playoffs.
In the playoffs.
So as Cody says, either generational deployment or the quietest major on-ice impact for these Abbotsford Canucks. And I'm, again, different...
21 years old.
Different style of game, a little bit, wrong side of the ice, but I wonder if there's a Kristian story there, where, he doesn't blow you away at all early on. There's not a lot of scuttlebutt about the player, and then all of a sudden just creates a winning atmosphere when he's out there by his positional play and smart passing.
And the AHL informs us that teams that win Game 3 after splitting the first 2 go on to win 71% of the time in the Calder Cup final. Abby is now 9-2 on home ice at Abbotsford Center. And we had talked about it going into last night. Charlotte was not only a good team, they were an exceptional, road warriors team. That was their first loss on the road in the postseason. They're 5-1 now. Okay, small sample. But they had won 10 straight on the road dating back to the regular season. And now what that means with Game 4 going tomorrow, the possibility exists, Blake Price, for the Abbotsford Canucks to lift the Calder Cup on home ice Saturday in Game 5 if they can win the next 2.
All they have to do is win the next one, though, and we've created that buildup, though. So, never mind if they actually consummated in the 3rd home game, but if they can just win the next one and give us that storyline going into Game 5, would be an awful lot of fun.
You could have an international hockey trophy lifted in this community.
Yeah. Championship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yep. Sammy Blay, he's been a big part of it, and he's quite an instinct. He's Abbotsford's rat, right?
Yep.
He was talking how incredible the crowd was at Abbey Center. Here's Sammy.
We were obviously really excited to be back in front of our fans. Easily the best fan in the league. You can see it, how they bring the energy for us, and they've been there all year for us. So we were really excited for this one, and really happy we got the win tonight. I'm just really proud of the boys, and really happy to be a part of such a good group of guys. And but there's still a lot of work in front of us, and I know we're gonna get better as the series goes. And for us, we enjoyed this one tonight, and get back to work tomorrow.
It was his birthday too.
Yeah. How old?
29.
I hear that accent. We had referenced Alex Burrows earlier in the conversation. What did the Abbotsford Canucks go out and do last night?
Win deterred.
One deterred.
By a long shot.
They sure did.
Would you throw a $750K NHL deal Sammy Blais way? He did not have an NHL contract this year, folks.
No,
he played
I know.
on an
Yes.
AHL contract only.
So I would leave that almost entirely up to Manny Malhotra. I would say, look, Manny, if you think this guy is good for the young prospects in the room we're trying to develop, then we are most interested in bringing him back.
He's the kind of player that you sign him to a two-way deal, and if you do bring him up and give him a look-see at the NHL levels, and he's fourth line. Nobody's dreaming anything differently than that. But
I even think he's going to have trouble getting. I mean, he didn't get it this year, Blake. And then you just look at the volume of young forwards that they have that I think they would be more interested in seeing in the NHL than Sammy. But
no one provides the on-ice personality, none of them, that Sammy Blais have. And again, I haven't watched enough Sammy Blais to know if his wheels will still translate, and he has some speed. But again, yeah, I think you're right. You talk to Manny Malhotra and say, and I mean, you're going to get a lot of eyes on ice here for the Canuck management. This is the other beauty of having the one thin silver lining of you not making the playoffs, but your AHL team is now you get to lay actual eyeballs on your prospect for a lot more times than you anticipated. So they've seen a lot of them, and they can make it because there's not a lot of personality. We just talked about the personality in the Florida Panthers room. Like having personality, maybe not a bad thing given the season that the Vancouver Canucks just had.
Yeah.
Injecting a little bit of personality.
Can you imagine?
Maybe not a bad thing.
How desperate some of those guys would have been for like a light, airy few days.
Yeah.
In that Canucks room. Like a breezy, carefree, everybody just getting along organically, natural laughs, things like that.
Yeah.
Let me throw this on your plate.
Okay.
It's a name you may have forgotten.
Yes.
But Vitali Kravtsov.
Oh, yeah, I saw this.
Is still property of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yep.
Now, you may remember the Canucks acquired Vitali Kravtsov, who is once upon a time
top prospect,
was a top 10 pick in the draft, for heaven's sakes.
Absolutely.
9th overall, the Rangers in 2018, albeit a bit of a surprise.
And he's, 25 now? How old is he?
He's not that old. Yeah,
no.
25, be 26 in December.
Okay.
Last with the Canucks in the 22-23 season, he played 16 games after coming over from the Rangers and really didn't account himself well at all.
Yeah.
But he's gone back to the KHL. Last season, he was 34 points in 55 games. But wow, did he break out this year? 27 goals, 31 assists, tied for the league's best plus-minus at plus 31. And there's a KHL News Hub reporting he is looking to make a return to the National Hockey League. He has gone back and forth between the KHL and the National Hockey League 3 times now. Wasn't getting the opportunity with the Rangers, didn't want to be in Hartford. Okay, he left, then came back, then he left again, then came back, then came over to the Vancouver Canucks. So this would be a 4th separate North American stint for Vitali Kravtsov.
You could sign
young enough to be curious is the only thing I'm going to say there.
Yep. And you could sign him to a PTO and tell him to come in and earn his spot. There have been other NHL contracts with outs, Matt. I believe, who's the young Philadelphia Flyer here? I'm losing my mind.
Michkov?
Didn't Michkov's contract somehow have an out that if he's not getting enough playing time with the Flyers, he gets to come back to the KHL, something to that effect?
So Blake, don't ask me to try and understand how the KHL and the Russians do business. It's a fool's
No, but it's more how the NHL does business. Like, how does that have teeth in the NHL CBA? I don't know. But if you could construct something like that, I don't know the details on what's allowable there. But if you could say, hey, we'll sign him. Mm-hmm. And if we have no use for him after 20 games, he can come back to you. Then Sure.
So the Canucks currently have, just to explain this for everybody, the Canucks currently have Vitali Kravtsov on their reserve list. A reserve list is for unsigned players whose rights you hold. It typically applies to draft picks. For example, Anthony Romani is on the reserve list for the Vancouver Canucks. Aiden Celebrini. These are unsigned draft picks. At some point, they relinquish the rights. But so Kravtsov is there with a bunch of young, recent draftees whose rights are retained by the Vancouver Canucks. They hold his rights until December of 2026. And don't ask me why it's December 23rd, 2026. He is, as Blake says, without contract, so you would have to sign him. And look, coming off a season like that, is he willing to sign a two-way deal, Blake, or are you just going to have to pay him on a one-way deal, even if it's at lower NHL costs, and then bite the bullet and play him in the minors if he can't make your big team? I don't know. And as we have talked about through this Abbey run and towards the end of the season, the bottom six actually looks pretty good. Like you can construct many different combinations on the third and fourth line for the Vancouver Canucks with existing NHLers and some of these young guys making names for themselves. And I think you could feel reasonably good about that part of your team. It's the upper levels of the team, especially at forward, that need more work.
The other thing about Kravtsov is he's a big body. He's always maligned for not using it, but maybe he's learning how to use that big body of his as well. So, be intriguing.
Yeah, so we'll see where that situation goes if anywhere. I mean, the one thing I will say is he was acquired on Rutherford and Alvin's watch. So it's not like this is a ghost from yesteryear that new management doesn't know or doesn't have any use for.
This is not Nikita Trampkin.
Right. We could have had a player here, not for the weed.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of weed in downtown Vancouver.
Poor Trampkin. He's 30, you know.
Is he 30 now?
Time flies.
Quick Nikita Trampkin
8
story.
straight years in Yekaterinburg.
Quick Nikita Trampkin story. So we're at the draft in Philadelphia. What is this, 2014? Jim Benning's first draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go Virtanen and McCann in the first round. They go Thatcher and Demko in the second round. They all parade over to our broadcast location. They're all pretty big boys, too. Well, McCann not so much, but you know, Virtanen and Demko, reasonably sizable guys. And then the name comes out, Nikita Trampkin, and I go, okay, I've read about this guy. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's that monstrous defenseman from Russia. And so we're doing the research on the fly, and the first thing we realized, oh my God, he's been passed over in 2 different drafts. He's like 20 years old. And so we're talking about him, thinking there is no way a kid from Russia who has been passed over in the draft twice is in attendance. And then the next thing we know, I forget it was staff for Ben or TC from the Canucks PR staff, is standing there with this monstrous kid and says, this is Nikita Trampkin.
And his hand was like a catcher's mitt. My little paw disappeared in his grip.
And I believe we got Canucks scout Sergei Chibisov to translate for us. I got a lot of grief for greeting him in Russian, the one Russian phrase I know.
By the way, the first 4 picks of that draft, Ekblad, Reinhart, Draisaitl, Bennett.
Yes.
The big Stanley Cup for the 2014 draft.
It really was.
That was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Kasperi Kapanen, too, also later in that first round.
Oh, my goodness.
A little less of an impact.
Anyways, I hope Nikita is doing well there away from the weed. I guess there's a different kind of smoke in the air in Russia. A little more industrial.
Yes.
Perhaps not quite as pungent. All right, let's get to today's menu. Nikita Trampkin. There was a moment there, but do you remember his first shift? He jumped on the ice, he skated around, and he skated back to the bench.
Might have been 7 seconds.
Was it Rick Bowness was the defense coach? Or no, Doug Litzer. And Litzer's like, what are you doing? I come back to the bench.
I'm good.
He didn't want to get caught out.
Nope.
Let's keep our shift short, guys. The Russian goes, okay, I'll play 12 seconds. I'll go right back to the bench. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta. A fantastic spot to watch all the games, or to pregame, or to postgame. You're just steps from the arena or stadium, but an even better spot for your summer event. If you're hosting an upcoming party, team building event, summer sociable, maybe you're looking for a spot in advance of a wedding or post-wedding, check out Greta. The menu is fantastic, not pretentious at all. This is just good food that people want to eat. The arcade, so much fun. A game for everybody. For more info, to book your event, gretabar.com, Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Today on the program, we're going to speak to Frank Corrado about the Canucks and about the Stanley Cup. And then it has been too long. Our friend Kristian Jack, and Kristian at one point was a weekly regular for us
when he was on the
soccer
TSN
beat.
panel.
Yeah, absolutely. Kristian Jack is going to join us, of course, of OneSoccer in the Canadian Premier League. He covered Canada's magnificent 6-0 victory over Honduras at BC Place yesterday before 24,000 people. I mean, has Canadian soccer ever looked that good, Blake? Goodness gracious. Goal after goal after goal, and beautiful goals. Burnaby's Nico Segur with the first one. It turns out to be the winner. Promise David continues to look like a missing piece, a different kind of striker than Jonathan David.
All he does is score goals.
That's all he does. Was that 2 backflips from Tayshaun Buchanan on his goal?
Certainly was.
It was a hell of a celebration. Yeah. And the crowd was all decked out in red. So a fantastic evening. KJ will be here to chit-chat about it. Also talk about the Vancouver Canucks. They don't ever lose. And the BC Lions may have to do it without Nathan Rourke. That's all coming up on the show. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I was a loser yesterday, so go ahead.
I'm looking ahead to Canada's next match of this Gold Cup, where they take on Curacao, below the Hondurans, obviously, in the world rankings, but maybe not necessarily justifiably so. Curacao has the Dutch influence. They're a pretty well-trained, well-coached side. But 6 goals from Canada? Yeah. So what you can do is you can go to goals on Bet365.
You going to run it up here?
You can go to Canada, and you can take a look at the overs for goals scored just for Team Canada. You can be conservative. Over 2, so that means 3 or more, plus 120. Mm-hmm. Over 3, so 4 or more, plus 300.
I like that.
I think they can put up a 4 spot.
Yeah, I mean, this is, on paper, this is supposed to be a weaker side than Honduras. Now, you're not at home, but
they just scored 4 goals against Ukraine, who are 25th in the world.
That's right.
Plus 300 for 4 goals or more.
I'm also going to the Gold Cup. We mentioned it earlier in the week that, be careful in these matches because there has been a tradition of banana peels in this tournament. Mexico was almost upset by the Dominican Republic. The DR faces Costa Rica this afternoon. It's plus 350 to tie, plus 600 to win. So that's exceptional value on an up-and-coming side that got close and is probably going to be hungry after they got a sniff at maybe beating El Tri.
I would go draw. Here's my reasoning for this. Because I think there's a reason to believe they might
have expended all their...
Well, they might rest a couple of guys that performed well versus Mexico to try to win their minnow game, which is their 3rd game of the group.
Got you.
Right?
Either way, there's no more hockey outside of the Calder Cup to bet on. Very little basketball now after the NBA Finals, so I'm looking more and more at soccer. And this segment of presentation of Bet365, whatever your bet, it is never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use the code NATION. Bet365 must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Frank Corrado, next. Mr. Carson Price from the historic Wall Center.
And if you are looking for something to put the wind in your hair this summer, something to get you excited on a daily basis, you know what will do that? Nice new car.
Yeah.
BZ4X. It's got that zoom in it that will make you want to roll down the windows, turn the music on up, jump into the HOV lane, and skip past all those gas stations. It's a lot of fun to drive. Go take one for a test drive. Pacific Toyota dealers have got them ready for you. The BZ4X with $5,000 in incentives available, 0.99%, financing over 36 months on the new LE all-wheel drive edition. ShopToyota.ca.
Frank Corrado is a former Vancouver Canuck and a TSN hockey analyst, and he joins us now from his home. How are you?
I'm good, boys. What's going on?
Have you ever played with a funnier tandem of goaltenders than Roberto Luongo and Corey Schneider?
Well, I was with those two for such a short period of time, and I'm pretty sure like my existence in the dressing room at that point was to just not be seen or heard or anything. So maybe
That's a good spot to watch them, though, sometimes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, just stay as far away from anyone as humanly possible. But Corey Schneider was, I think I've told this story a few times, kind of cool. Like after my first game, when I went to go do the goalie taps, he had the puck in his glove and he opened it and he goes, "This is for you." Like that was really cool, really awesome. But yeah, they're man,
We were just
golden
struck
era,
by-
golden era
yeah.
of goaltending in Vancouver there.
Well, we were just struck because, Corey's there working for NHL Network and he's interviewing Roberto amidst the Stanley Cup celebration. And we were sitting there thinking, oh, this should have been 2011.
Brad
What's-
Marchand is on the
Yeah,
ice.
Well,
Exactly.
that's what's weirder, seeing Corey and Lou do an interview together, or seeing Lou and Marshy like hugging.
Oh,
Amazing.
Yeah.
no, not amazing. No.
amazing
in a weird way. It's amazing.
In a clinical sense, like
Yes,
just
yeah.
it's truly amazing that happened.
Yeah.
It's a would you look at that? Like,
Yeah.
who would have thought?
Happy for Roberto, though. It's so competitive, wasn't able to win it as a player. I'm glad to see him get to partake in all this because he's a legend of the game, both on the ice and on social media.
Are you surprised how the last couple of games went in the Cup final, Frank, given that Edmonton looked like they had some extra wisdom this year and ultimately it's one fewer games that they lost?
I'll say this: if you asked me, at the start of the series, if I would have been surprised by that, I would say yes, because I would have thought that if you get late in the series, this is the McDavid time. This is the McDavid moment where we saw it last year in Game 7 after he was piping hot, for Games 4 and 5, basically went, quiet for Game 7, nothing. Or for Game 6, nothing. And then nothing in Game 7. And I'm like, well, it can't happen 2 years in a row to the guy that's the best player in the world. But sure enough, here we are. It basically did happen 2 years in a row. And I guess I'm not surprised that the last two games went the way they did because of watching the way Florida basically dismantle everyone en route to winning another Stanley Cup. And the only series that ends up going 7 is the one against Toronto. So you can't call it a dismantling, but you can say that they pounded them in games 5 and 7 to the point where like you forgot that series was actually close and Toronto was in the lead at some point. So given the fact that Florida was so efficient and clinical and got better and better as things went along, I'm not surprised. I guess I'm surprised that it wasn't the best player and the essentially second best player in the world having that you can't stop us moment.
What is the lesson of the Florida Panthers in terms of building a cup winner?
The lesson of the Florida Panthers, I think there's not just one lesson. I think there's a few things to be learned here as far as how they've built their team. They've been very diligent with how they've structured things with the salary cap. And I know everyone wants to get into the state tax thing, but back in 2019, they had to try and lure Sergei Bobrovsky to that team. And $10 million for a goaltender who 3 years ago, they probably would have been willing to get out of that contract, maybe, with the way things were going. That wasn't the no state tax discount. They had to be the highest bidder to get Bob, and they got him. So now that they've built this thing, they've built a team that all the roles are so defined and perfect for all the players involved. Like, yeah, they're a deep team. Sure, that's surface level stuff. But they're not asking their third line left winger to do more than he can. If anything, he's probably capable of more, but they're just asking him to do what he does and what he does well. And that's where, if you look at all the teams that have kind of come and gone here this year, as far as the playoff picture, and you look no further than the Edmonton Oilers, right? You had so many guys coming in and out of the lineup, and, capping and switching out for Arvidsson and Stetcher and Klingberg and all these things. And it's like, the Florida Panthers, they don't do that stuff. Going into Game 7, the Edmonton Oilers had used 25 different line combinations. The Florida Panthers had used 8. You know what that tells me? Everything's set in stone with Florida. And in Edmonton, it's just a lot, it's the two best players and a lot of moving parts, and you don't have Zach Hyman, and I get it. But as much as they're a deep team, physical team, well-coached team, the roles for the players are perfect in Florida.
We started having this conversation in full when Travis Green became the coach of the Canucks. So what is that, 8 years ago or so, something like that, 7-8 years ago, that the league was moving away from a defined top 6 and bottom 6. And it was more a top 9 and then get by with your fourth line.
Yeah.
When I've watched Florida over the last 2 years, I have seen 9 terrific two-way hockey players in their forward group. And I think that more than anything probably stands out as a recipe and a formula.
Yeah. And they have, give them credit because they've been aggressive as far as pursuing whoever the big fish is at the time, right? Whether it was Matthew Tkachuk or it was Sam Bennett, who, got traded for essentially not much. Sam Reinhart, like Seth Jones. They've nailed grabbing the big guy. And they've also nailed these, ones on the periphery of things, right? Like Luostarinen, pretty sure that was a guy they got in the Vincent Trocheck trade. That's Gus Forsling is a waiver pickup. They've made these really astute decisions on these guys and given them opportunities. And sure enough, look what it's done for them. And I'm kind of thinking back now at players that played for the Panthers in the last 7 or 8 years that are no longer there. And I was like, well, Vinny Trocheck was a Panther. Riley Smith was a Panther. Jonathan Marchessault was a Panther. Then you're like, we've never talked about any of that. We didn't talk about, we talked about the guys that went to Vegas because Vegas had success. But now it's such an afterthought because of how they've gone about replacing those players. And I don't know, man. It takes some stones to be a general manager who will take swings for sure. It also takes a really smart department, and they have that. And
I don't want to get too
active again.
I don't want to get too deep into the state tax weeds here, but they traded for a lot of their top end talent. The most of their difference makers were traded for, including even the contracts that they're currently on, were actually signed by other GMs where the state tax obviously wasn't a consideration. But when you consider Reinhart, Tkachuk, Marchand, Bennett, Seth Jones, all these players were, not signed to a Florida contract, but they were acquired via a trade. They have no draft picks, no top-end draft picks, really to speak of for the next 4 years, saying nothing of the years that have gone past already. I mean, this is some savvy trading, if nothing else. They have traded their way to a cup.
And you know what? They could care less about the draft picks. That goes without saying. But the scary thing is, if you looked at the Eastern Conference right now, and you could pick, the top 8 teams and maybe a couple more, do any of those teams, if you're Florida, do any of those teams scare you as far as that could be the team that knocks us off? I don't think so. I think you'd be foolish to think that there's a team that's just waiting to knock off Florida with the way that they dismantled everyone. And, as far as what they're going to do now here in free agency, Like they've got about $19 million to spend, and they don't have to get to a 23-man roster. Like you don't have to carry 23, so they could try and get creative here and bring back. Like Bill Zito was talking about it after the game. Like, yeah, we want to bring them back all three, and I think we can do it. And it's like maybe you can, but even if you can't, and you bring back two guys, and let's just say for argument's sake it's Bennett and Ekblad. The guys that are up that you would lose, that you have to replace, are all like league minimum type guys. Like it's Noshik, Nico Sturm, it's like Nate Schmidt, like the Lundells, the Lusterainens of the world.
Not going anywhere.
The Kulikovs, the Mikolas, they're all there and they're on term, not going anywhere. So like they're in a really, really good spot in their ability to get back there, which is crazy to even talk about at this point.
Well, they lost players from last year to this. Like Ekman Larsson went on, moved on. They just replaced guys at that level, right? It's
Brandon Montour moved on, right?
Yeah,
and eventually they found their replacement. It wasn't right away, but eventually they got the replacement.
Mackie Samoskevich, the only Florida Panther from the last 4 drafts to play NHL games. He's an RFA too, part of their offseason biz. But, I mean, the other thing we should say, Frank, and we used to talk about this a lot in this market because the owner's refusal to rebuild, we now just sort of take that as a matter of course. Since there's a first overall in Ekblad, there's a second overall in Barkov on the team. This is yet another Stanley Cup champion that had to sink to the bottom and get high top 5 picks, hit on those picks to bounce back up. That is still an NHL format. It doesn't guarantee a cup, but you look at cup winners, they tend to have top 5 picks on them.
Yeah.
And indigenous draft picks, not just guys they've acquired via trade.
But a lot of teams have those guys too, Matt, and they don't have the success. So it's about making the right choice at those picks
that's
too.
it.
I mean,
that's what I said.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, here
blow
closer
those
to home.
picks.
Closer to home for me, Toronto's got a first overall pick. They've got a 4th overall pick. They've got a 7th, what was it, Nylander, 6th or 7th overall pick, right? Like they've got they've got it too. It's just here's the Florida Panthers for you. You guys watched them pass the Stanley Cup to Nate Schmidt. Then you thought, okay, that's pretty cool, veteran guy. That's a nice gesture. And then you saw Nate Schmidt hand it off to another guy. Was it Seth Jones? And then Seth Jones handed it off to another guy who was like can't remember who it was. But then you started to get the feeling, you're like, wait a second. It's all the first timers that are getting the cup. Yeah. And not only is it all the first timers, it's guys that didn't even play games. Like I'm watching the third goalie carry the cup before like the regulars, the core guys got it. And then they all had the same sentiments in their interviews with Gene afterwards. And you're like, well, they didn't have earpieces in. Like Evan Rodriguez doesn't know what Bennett's saying, doesn't know what Reinhardt's saying, but these guys are truly on the same page in unison. And teams talk about how special of a group they are and how close they are. But then to see that happen, that was truly remarkable. And I guess the reason why I bring that up is you can have the first overall pick and you can have, the bottoming out, and it's great and you have the talent. But to have what they have right there, that's a different level. That, yes, you need the talent, but that's culture. People throw that word around, that's culture. Like I've seen guys, it's hard. The hierarchy exists in hockey. Like you could be at the pregame meal buffet and guys will go like 15 years in the league. That's my piece of chicken. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, these guys are letting the secondary and third layer of players hoist the Stanley Cup before them. And they're more excited for them than their own selves. I mean, that's what really separates the Florida Panthers as much as having some high picks on their roster too.
Brad Marchand made himself a ton of money here. Another contract late in his career, which is crazy. But the contract that I think everybody's curious about now in the wake is actually on the losing side of things, and that is for number 97. Does this change anything? We talked about this with, I think, John Shannon earlier in the week, who was of the mind, hey, Draisaitl's signed there. That seals the deal for McDavid to make sure that he signs. Is there any chance that these back-to-back losses changes that equation in your mind?
I don't know if it changes things. If anything, maybe it makes him hungrier to kind of finish up what they started in Edmonton. Yeah. Like I don't know if he would ever see it as like not quitting, because he's not. But just to finish out what you set to do. As far as the contract goes, I know Draisaitl's there for a long time now. There's nothing saying that McDavid has to sign an 8-year deal.
No.
The cap's going up so much. He could take a page out of the Matthews playbook here and say, guys, I'm going to do a 4-year deal, and we're going to give this a really honest shot here. That's basically 5 more years of trying as an Edmonton Oiler, brings him to age 33, right? 32, yep. 33. Then you're going to sign your next ticket till you're 40, and no one will ever fault you if you left at that point, because you gave it enough of a shot in Edmonton. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
I go shorter if I was him. I go 3 years. 3 years.
Yeah, and you know what? The money's still going to be there for you because you're the best player in the world. And at that point, even if you're a top 3 player in the world, like the cap is going up so much in that time that you're going to get paid an astronomical amount of money.
Are you done talking Cup with him?
Yes,
okay.
Sure.
I would like to move on to the Vancouver Canucks, Frank.
They did not make the Cup.
No.
It's a local show, guys. Local show.
They
Local, national.
They have made a Cup. It's just the wrong Cup. The Calder.
In fact, they haven't made a Cup since waiving Frank Corrado.
Yes,
all those years
true.
ago. So, Alexei,
it's cruel.
Hey, when Frank was there, they were a contender.
That's right.
Frank left, and then suddenly they were a ticket.
I was a spectator, but that was that's okay.
Correlation, causation, you choose. Alexei Lafreniere with the Rangers. How daunted would you be about that $7+ million contract that's going to kick in for a first overall? Took another step back last year, but has shown flashes of being an NHL scorer. And do you think, like, because of the contract, he might be attainable at a reasonable trade cost?
So I feel like it's hard to get a sense of, in New York last year, if players truly took a step back individually or if that was just a byproduct of the team environment and everything that was going on around them. He's still only 23 years old. 2 years ago, he had a really strong season, and it looked like he was really tracking in the right direction. And like we've talked about this before, not every first overall pick is built the same. Right, like that. Not everyone's a McDavid who turns around your franchise right away. Some guys are just good players who happen to be selected first overall, and that might be what Lafreniere is. And for how long is left on this deal? So the 7 years that's going to start here, it feels like that cap hit is going to get more and more digestible as the cap goes up. And as a 23-year-old player, is he going to get better and better, especially if, whatever team he's playing on, whether it's the Rangers or if he does get moved, it's a better situation than what was happening there this year, where it just sounds like and feels like, everything kind of went wrong for everyone involved, including their goaltender, who's one of the best in the world. So I would be more on the optimistic side of Lafreniere and the contract and what he can be, rather than thinking at 23, he took a step back and it's doomed to just be what he was last year, a 40, 50 point guy, with a lot of money being owed to him. I can't say that based on the year the Rangers had and how it affected everyone.
Yeah. Then to Anaheim, where there was a report yesterday about Troy Terry being available. And, of course, there's also the Zegras factor there into the final year of his deal. at 5.75. What do you think of Terry and Zegras?
So Troy Terry's a really good player. Like he's their best forward. He's the best forward on the team. So I can't understand why he would just be out there and available. And maybe he is, because you look at it and you say, this is the guy that's going to fetch us the most, or something that can change our group. But I'm not necessarily sure the Ducks need change at this point. They just need to take another step forward. Like they kind of just need the veteran insulation that they're bringing in right now. And say what you want about Chris Kreider, but he's a veteran guy, like Alex Killorn, another guy that these guys can lean on. Ryan Strome, same type of deal. Even Jacob Trouba, whatever you think of his game, where he's at, like it goes a long way for young players having having those sounding boards as far as the veterans around them. The Zegras thing. The Zegras thing I find more interesting because 24 years old, I think he's around or just under $6 million, and he's going to have arbitration coming up like the year after next. But his ARB case, like, unless he has a monster year, his ARB case is not going to be very strong. And I feel like the return for Zegras at this point is not going to be very high. So, do you keep him and take your chances that there's still, because he's a young guy, there's still something there, or do you kind of say maybe it's best for him to move on and we're gonna try with someone else? But with the new coach coming in, like I don't think Zegras was ever going to be a Greg Cronin guy, and I don't think a lot of guys would have been Greg Cronin guys from the sounds of it. Can Joel Quenneville get more out of Trevor Zegras? Like I would want to see. Before I make these types of decisions, I'd want to see what all my guys look like with the new coach first.
And playing with Captain America, if you will, and Quinn Hughes, you wonder if Zegras would find his maturity a little bit quicker, and think about yesteryear and playing with him. And they know each other well. He's a little bit better buddies with Jack as Trevor, but I mean, you can imagine that there's something there if they became teammates.
Yeah. It's just, I guess the Zegras thing is when he was at his best, he was such an exciting player to watch, right? Like for whatever you thought about the Michigan and stuff, like there was an excitement level to watching Zegras. I don't think that's there anymore, and I wonder if Quenneville can bring that back, because at the very least he could be, hey man, not everyone has to be Sam Reinhart, not everyone has to be Bennett, but some guys can work in certain situations if they're just really, really good at one thing. So maybe he can be really, really good at being creative and a playmaker and exciting again, and surrounded by the right guys. Maybe you live with the warts, but I think first and foremost, get back to your strengths and get back to what was going to or is going to make you a good player, and then figure the rest out from there.
Frank, you'll be with TSN on July 1st, free agent frenzy, working the big board there of all the different contracts. And I know you'll be prepping for all their valuations heading into Canada Day. We will catch up next week, talk some draft and talk more free agency.
Looking forward to it, boys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for this.
Thank you, guys.
Sick Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. We talked about it on yesterday's show, Blake. What a terrific evening for sports watching. You watch the Stanley Cup final, and just about when it's done, then here comes Canada-Honduras in the opener of the Gold Cup from BC Place. And, well, Canada scored as much as the two hockey teams combined. A 6-0 thrashing of Honduras. Just a magnificent performance for the Canadian men's soccer team. And who better to break it all down than our old friend, our dear friend Kristian Jack, the Vice President of Media and Content for OneSoccer in the Canadian Premier League, who covered the game at BC Place. Long time. How are you, friend?
I suppose it has been a long time, but I don't know. I always feel like I'm a friend of the show, whether I'm around.
Yeah, you sure are.
That.
You sure are. Yeah. You sure are. How did Canada look that good, Kristian, and what does that portend here going forward?
Yeah, I think it was not a long time coming, but certainly for Jesse Marsch, he's been pressing this for a while in terms of bringing that kind of ruthless style to the Canadian team. You mentioned the Stanley Cup. You know how much I love hockey. I know that was a big factor in your show this morning. So let's go there. Like Jesse Marsch has used Canadian hockey players as an example to these Canadian soccer players to say, look, you know, when these hockey players go onto the ice, they are a lot less Canadian, so to speak, than they can be off the ice, right? He wants that ruthless edge. He wants that swagger and arrogance a little bit. And last night, they kind of showed that. I think, I mean, I spoke to Tanielo O'Shea after the game, and he said even when he scored his goal, he already felt like they were so far on top of the team. And this is at 1-0 before halftime. So he was already kind of alluding to the fact that, you know, we just kind of knew that we had a little bit more ability to just, you know, go after this team. And so, look, you know, I don't think we're at that point where we can say, oh, well, Honduras were really poor. I think we should be complimenting Canada because maybe in other performances like that, Canada may have won 2-0, kind of just comfortable. But no, it was nice to go out there and deliver an emphatic victory and a statement, even though I couldn't get that word out of Jonathan David after the game, but that's okay.
There's, you know,
good attempt.
You're right about the swagger too, because there's players that are struggling, but maybe looking for themselves a little bit. Like Nathan Saliba, I've done a couple of CF Montreal games this year. I've never seen him play with that sort of swagger, with that sort of confidence, and I'm talking pre-goal. The goal was amazing, but you know, that's sort of in garbage time. But just the savviness that he played in the midfield that didn't have Stefan Eustachio there or Ishmael Kone, who are both away from the team, or Kone just having arrived back. I did wonder how the midfield would work with Choinière, his former teammate Saliba, and the two of them were magnificent.
Yeah, they were really great, and this is what Canada needs, guys. You know, like that you mentioned, you know, Saliba, Sigur from obviously Burnaby, and then obviously gets his first goal with his family in the crowd. Neither of those players were a factor in Copa America 1 year ago. So already a year later, we're not just like bringing players on the periphery. We're giving them big roles, starting opportunities to then go, okay, now you can make a meaningful impact right away. And this is what they need in the evolution of the team going forward, because it is all about the World Cup. It is all about depth. It is all about that ability to bring more players in. You know, in 3 games alone in Qatar, John Herdman used 19 players. So, like, it just goes to show you with the 5 substitutions now how much that depth is going to be needed. And whether Saliba or Segura get a start at the World Cup or get minutes, you know, whenever they get them, they've got to be impactful. But I thought the point about midfield was really good. You did the game against Ivory Coast. The midfield struggled a little bit in that game. Different kind of look to that last night. Choinière was brilliant from set pieces, which is another area that Canada's got a lot better in over the last few weeks. Certainly with the acquisition of the new coach there in that area as well. And Saliba was, you know, I've got a sit-down interview with him today that we put out on OneSoccer. He's a bright young man, and he just seems like a player that is, as you alluded to, it's like that in all sports, right? Like they come away from a difficult environment with the club. It's not going well. They're not winning a lot of games. You've really got to dig deep. There's a lot of rumors about him moving on. And then he comes to this other team in Canada that feels like a club team because of the camaraderie. And then it's like, okay, this is what real football and harmony and togetherness and teamwork is supposed to feel like. And he's just going and blossoming.
And he could be an Anderlecht by the end of the week, it sounds like? Or
yeah, it sounds like he's very close. He didn't bite on the interview that I had, but I understand why. But look, there's a lot of talk around in Montreal that they don't expect him back after this competition.
And that's been another through line for Canada. Their players have used these springboards to bigger and better leagues professionally.
Yeah.
Kristian, I want to spend a moment on the young man you just mentioned, Nico Sigur. 21 years old from Burnaby. We talked about him on yesterday's show, saying that, you know, even for us here in his hometown, he's a little bit of an unknown playing professionally over in Croatia. We referenced that lovely feature that Josh Cloakey did on in the Athletic on Nico about how singularly focused he is on being the best soccer player he can be. He scores a goal last night in the stadium where he used to be a ball boy for the Canadian men's national team. So a beautiful moment there. But he was playing in the Alphonso Davies spot, and we have mused here about, is there a world where he becomes such a fixture that they could move Alphonso a little bit further up the park?
Originally, that was a Sam Adekubi conversation,
right.
But now it might be.
So tell us, what do you foresee for this young man in his future? How good could he be?
Well, I mean, Seager's got the brains and the intelligence that just make it so easy to play with. You know, you could see in the goal, like Jonathan David is the most intelligent Canadian player on the team and may well be one of the most intelligent Canadian footballers of all time. And you can just see them combined together right away, you know. And Nico told me after the game, like, he doesn't just run into the box every moment. Like, like he's got to pick and choose his moments, but because he knew at that moment he was going to receive that pass from David, that it was just a great opportunity for them to expose Honduras. Not only does he bring savviness and intelligence, he's got real technical quality and athleticism. So like he played right back last night. He can play central midfield. He's another one, like Blake said, that hasn't had a smooth season at Hajduk Split. Could be moving as well, destined for another move. But he's got almost kind of like that European Croatian style about him that we don't always produce in Canada. He's just got that ruthlessness on the ball, holds it up a little bit more, so he's a bit stronger, technical, and for me, he just thinks a little bit more like a Croatian player than some Canadian players would produce. And that's not a knock on us. It's just the way that they are produced there. So look, he's got, like I said, he's got the personality that is needed in this team. He's got a grit and determination. He's very singular focused, as Josh alluded to. Anytime we talk to him, he's very serious, and I think that's a good thing. And he got his opportunity. I think this is just another player that Canada's going to need at the World Cup to play really significant minutes.
We could go one by one through all the different performances, even substitution performances like that of Promise David, who is just a goal poacher extraordinaire.
He is my new sports crush, Promise David. Yeah. That goal he scored with the fancy footwork was the 5th goal or whatever it was. Yeah. Wow, I can't get enough of him.
And Tajon is back, and I was scared that he was not going to be back after the big injury. So all that is good. But let's go a little bit more broad for the tournament and for the next year here, Kristian. This has been a pretty marvelous year under Jesse Marsch. Do they win the tournament? Do they need to win this tournament, the Gold Cup? And then should Canadians be dreaming big about the World Cup? And maybe not hoisting the World Cup. That might be just a dream too much.
Yeah.
But success of some sort at the World Cup. And I don't mean just a victory, like escaping group stage and actually creating some stir.
Yeah, great question. For me, I think I'll go to the second part. This is all about the World Cup. And I know the Gold Cup is significant, and we're traveling around with a team, and we're on TSN, and we're trying to get people to watch us on OneSoccer, and everything that we're doing and telling every story, all the 26 players, is all important. And the discussion right now about can Canada be favorites, should they be favorites, is warranted. I think Mexico, whenever they're in a competition that they're in right now with the players that they're playing, for me, are the favorites. And then after that, Canada's right there. So, okay, first, second favorites, doesn't matter. They're a real contender. Let's just call it that, right? But I do think that the Jesse Marsch era, let's call it, this era that we're building towards the World Cup, will be defined, will be written by what happens at the World Cup, regardless of whether they win the Gold Cup, right? If they win the Gold Cup and then they flame out in the groups next year, it will be considered a disaster, right? If they don't win the Gold Cup this year and then they progress through the World Cup next year and somehow get a knockout game and win that knockout game and get to the last 16, that is a real success, right? So that's what we're all aiming for. That's what the entire country is hoping for. So I think, to answer your question, it's all about that. It's about building up for that. And then where we are right now is a massive storyline in this, Vancouver. They come to Vancouver for Game 2 at the World Cup. They come to Vancouver for Game 3 at the World Cup. If they win that group, and it's an if, but if they win that group, they play here again. And that is an enormous story, and that is an enormous motivation for them to stay here. We know what home advantage can do. Don't have to go to the States, play that knockout game. And look, people can say maybe we're getting ahead of it because Canada's never even won a game at a World Cup. But this is different. They're at home. The team is different. The World Cup is different. It's expanded to 48 games. And a game like last night and an opponent like last night in Honduras, I think Canada has the right to believe that they're going to get a game like that. They're going to get a tough game in the group. They're going to get a middle tough game in the group. And they're going to get a game like that. They're going to get a game where everybody expects them to go out there and beat them heavily, regardless of what they've done in the history of the World Cup. And they're the games they got to go out there and win. And if they can get them and win them big, they can win the group.
I wanted to ask you about this, KJ, because in your duties with the CPL, you get to meet and get the temperature coast to coast. Just shy of 25,000 at BC Place last night. Jesse Marsch had challenged this community to sell it out. I know he was a little disappointed in the crowd size at BMO for the Canadian Shield. What's your sense of where the Canadian public is at with this squad 1 year out?
I think it's growing. I'm not naive enough to believe that we need to keep working on it. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but they need to be tested in other areas. Like I thought last night was a really good crowd. And what I mean by a really good crowd is I don't mean the number. I mean an educated crowd, a crowd that was behind Canada from the start, a crowd that is involved in the game, and a knowledgeable crowd. And for me, those things don't get talked about enough. Everyone's focusing on a number, right? But I'm not a businessman inside Canada Soccer. I'm not a businessman inside Vancouver. It doesn't matter to me. It's about, are these fans engaged, right? They're not walking out after 25 minutes to go get hot dogs and popcorn. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're engaged. They're there in their seats early. They're singing the anthem. Players are walking off and getting substituted, and they're standing and giving them an ovation. They're engaged, and they know the names of the players. And that's part of this process. It's about education and understanding that these fans are into it. And the Vancouver fans, I thought, were excellent last night. Look, it would have been nice to have a bigger number. That is not really on me. I could talk about, I think that the price of the tickets were probably too high. It's not ideal when you go into Ticketmaster and you type in Canada Soccer and it says no games. You have to type Gold Cup or Canada Soccer Association. All small things, but lead to big things, right?
Yeah.
So these are things that need to be worked on and get better. But I think ultimately, look, we know that stadium will be packed next year at the World Cup. But it's about making sure that those fans are engaged and understanding these players. And I just want to play a small part in that, mate. Like, it's not just about Alphonso Davies. It's about the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th man trying to make this roster. Let's make them all stars and get their stories out there.
Yeah, you're being modest. You're not a small part, sir. In fact, you might be the biggest part in terms of wising us up and educating us on the beautiful game over your career.
They proved that they can put grass down in that stadium and make it work well.
Right.
We've seen grass again. We saw it versus Wrexham, Whitecaps versus Wrexham. Yeah. It was okay. It wasn't as good looking as that. Like, you could see the pallets versus Wrexham. Couldn't really see the seams, and the players seemed to love it, by the way.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if you saw it. Victor Montagliani joined us pregame, and he kind of went off a little bit on Canada Soccer, but he also dropped the note that I was trying to find out all week. $1 million was what the cost was for the laying of the grass for the game.
For one game, yeah.
For one game. And I figured that. I've been there a couple of days already. I'd seen the amount of workers working on that and how long they've been related that they were putting it in there. There was people in there since Thursday of last week. And they were very protective of it when we were there for the match day -1. No one was allowed to train on it beforehand. So it was like anything, right? A good audition for the World Cup. I thought the surface played well and looked good, and every credit that they did that. Because, I mean, you could have easily just said, let's just play a game against Honduras for one Gold Cup game on the Whitecap surface, but they didn't.
And even the players mentioned, KJ, you walked out there, it smelled like a soccer pitch. It was a legitimate soccer stadium for one night only at the very least, and will be for many more nights in the future.
Last question. What does a knowledgeable Englishman think of the play-by-play we've been getting on Canadian soccer here over the
yeah, great job. I loved it. I loved having him on there. You know, it's not easy to work with Mr. Caldwell. So no, I'm just kidding. He's one of
he was very. I defer to Mr. Wildman, though. I would rather listen to Wildman than myself. So we're blessed when we get.
But you know what? You're a humble star. We would all say we'd rather listen to other people than ourselves. That's just natural. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
It's no, you did a great job, mate. A great job at telling the stories, and you know. Luke Wildman's brilliant at his job, but we need more. So it's nice to have
more Blake
just like the Canadian team. Maybe some
exactly.
depth.
Right? That's what I would say, right? Like if Luke's our Eustachio, then you're Ashwanya, buddy. Let's go.
I was going to say you could be the promise to Luke's Jonathan.
I get to live in Switzerland.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Marvelous catching up, my friend. Thank you for the time. Enjoy the rest of yours here in Vancouver. Look forward already to the weekend in Canada's next match.
Yeah, looking forward to heading to Houston tomorrow. Canada trains here for the last time today and then flies to Houston. Games on Saturday and then Tuesday to wrap up the group at the Gold Cup.
Just wish these next matches were here in Canada, KJ. You know, like...
Yeah,
we'll be watching.
I would prefer wearing a suit here again than going to Houston wearing one. So
Yeah. Be well.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
So here's some price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Sekerson price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention us. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Because you got a football game Saturday. Stay here at the Wall. Enjoy your city.
It's been a busy summer already.
A week from Friday, everybody, the National Hockey League entry draft, and If you want the broad tip-to-tail NHL coverage, check out the Sheet Draft Special going live on Daily Faceoff's YouTube channel. That's Friday, June 27th at 4 p.m. That's, of course, with our buddy Jeff Merrick, who will join us later this week. They're going to have real-time coverage of the 2025 draft, diving into every pick, top prospects, surprise steals, the strategies, the trades, all of that. So the Sheet Draft Special live June 27th, 4 p.m. on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Subscribe now so you don't miss a moment. That's brought to you by the Nation Network. We, of course, are going to have our own draft show going, Vancouver Canucks focused, as you well know. And so next Friday, we will not be in the usual 12 noon time slot. We are moving our show back into the draft to be able to cover.
No point in doing a show and then hours later breaking news everywhere, right?
Exactly.
We'll go to the news.
Do it live.
Yeah.
Nathan Rourke did not make it through practice yesterday. When it came to the full speed portions of the session, he was on the sidelines giving way to veteran backup Jeremiah Masoli. It is officially a core injury as listed by the BC Lions. He's officially limited at practice. And this does not look great for Saturday's home game, the rematch against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He also acknowledged post-practice that the injury could get worse if exacerbated. And he used the phrase long season, which I think is a bit of a tell here. Here's more from Rourke as he told Steve Ewan in the Province, quote, "I want to play, and especially because we don't play these guys again for the rest of the regular season. I don't feel like I played my best the other night. So it means a little bit more." Yeah, I mean, Mount Winnipeg was the thing when Rourke was here. He went to the NFL. He came back. Mount Winnipeg is still a thing for the BC Lions. You can remember that scene a few years ago in the playoffs where he was so emotionally distraught, in tears, after losing to the Bombers. So he owes them not one, not two. He owes them a lot and is not going to get a chance to play them again unless it's in the playoffs, should he miss Saturday.
Which is too bad. You'd love to swap this out for an easier opponent and see what Masoli does there. But
I loved what I forget who said it from the TSN booth last week when they were doing the game. But Mike O'Shea's approach to the schedule now every year is great schedule. Like, he doesn't even want to go down the road of complaining about anything lest he gives his players any kind of, excuse. So, look, in terms of the BC Lions, we've talked about it a couple of times here. The really short week going into Winnipeg, and then Winnipeg here in week 3, and then Winnipeg not again all year. That kind of sucks.
Well, it sucks because you want to know where you stand a little bit later in the season. If it's week 14, you get to know a little bit where you're at. And now, for the next 3 months, you're going to be wondering, I wonder how we stack up with Winnipeg.
Exactly.
Because as we've seen with the Lions starting 5-0 that one 2 seasons ago, and then flaming out, you really don't know what you are after the first 6-7 weeks.
And a lot of veteran clubs in the CFL that know they're pretty good. And we saw this with the Bombers last year. They are basically running an extended training camp to some degree. They're trying some guys out, right? They're working with their ratio a little bit. They're figuring out what is optimal for September and beyond.
You're wondering if the veteran still has it.
No, exactly.
All that sort of stuff.
In some cases, you may be trying to preserve some veterans, right? Because it's a long season. Gary Peters also limited at practice with a thigh ailment. I thought he played pretty well. He's probably their best defensive player. So we'll see how he makes it through the rest of the week. It's a 4 p.m. kickoff at BC Place on Saturday. The Seas win again. It's now 11 in a row. 11-8. They win at Eugene. Their magic number to clinch the first half is now 2, meaning a win tonight coupled with an Everett loss means Vancouver would be going back to the Northwest League Championship Series in September and with home field advantage. Arjun Nimmala hit his 11th home run of the season. Victor Arias went deep as well. Sean Keyes drives in 3. Cutter Coffey had 4 hits. Those are all still prospects for the Toronto Blue Jays. So that's good tidings. Gage Stanifer starts tonight, trying to get them to the playoffs. He's improving his prospect lot in life, having already been promoted up to Vancouver this year. They're back at home Tuesday for a 6-game set with Tri-City that features Main Street Hipster Night on Tuesday. Had a good discourse about that yesterday. Post-game fireworks on Thursday, a Friday nooner, and a Saturday Marvel Superhero Day with a comic book giveaway. Plus, of course, your White Spot Family Fun Sunday, a Stuart Baroa bobblehead giveaway. Sadly, he's not with the Jays anymore, but he was a C. Tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com.
And a former Vancouver Canadian won them the game last night at the big league level. Addison Barger with the walk-off home run.
Addison Barger has been one of the keys here to the Blue Jays turnaround, and it started in that series in Seattle. He had a big series, and we had talked about this before the season started, Blake. When you looked at that Jays team on paper, you went, okay, those are 3 really good professional starters in Barrios, Bassett, and Gausman. You know they are going to keep you in games. You were hoping for Bowden Francis to be a little better, and so then you had 4, and you only had to get through one spot in the rotation. That has not yet
Scherzer, of
happened.
course.
Yeah, but the flip side of it, on the offensive side of things, it was like, okay, well, Bichette and Guerrero have to bounce back and be better than they have been. That was a given. Honestly, frankly, ditto for George Springer as well. Had a shockingly bad year last year. That's all happened.
Yep.
But they needed one of the kids to step up, and Barger has been the kid that has stepped up. And so that was a key piece to the season, as was Alejandro Kirk and what he's doing now. He has been one of the best hitters in baseball here on such a hot streak. So good for him as well. I think they made the right call. There was some talk that they may move on from him, and I was like, that's crazy town. What are you doing there? Down the I-5, the Seattle Mariners beat the Red Sox 8-0, this after getting shut out by the Red Sox in the opener of that series. But Cal Raleigh, M's catcher, became the first player in Major League history last night to drive in 6+ runs, hit a grand slam, steal a base, out-hit the entire opposition. He had more hits than the opposition. And that's since RBI became an official stat in 1920. Blake, you can make a case that Cal Raleigh is right there with Aaron Judge in terms of the American League MVP race, and it is required that Jerry Dipoto and the baseball ops office there with the M's do everything they can to support him in the lineup and add some bats. That is clearly a playoff team, and we are seeing one of the fantastic seasons from a Mariners hitter of all time.
27 home runs.
27 home runs. We're not even at the All-Star break for a catcher.
That's absurd.
It is.
60 RBI. By the way, the
And
Yankees
he's so much fun. Like, he has fun with himself, the nickname Big Dumper and all that.
Aaron Judge and company have lost 5 in a row.
Yes, and they haven't scored here.
And the AL East is all of a sudden up for grabs again.
Yes. Poll question results. Whistler Golf Club poll question results from Tuesday. We asked you, does Bowen Byram make sense for the Vancouver Canucks? Yes or no, the people said?
No.
Correct percentage?
63.
61%. Pretty good, Blake. We saw a lot of this. I'll read Chuck's, but we saw many variations of this. This would only make sense if it was done alongside a Hughes trade, thus fundamentally changing the face of the franchise. This owner isn't one for being proactive. However, Chris says, yes, absolutely. Even with Hughes on the roster, the Canucks need more of that kind of skill set. Marcus Pettersson for Bowen Byram. Yeah, we saw a lot of that as well. Can never have enough puck-moving, puck-transporting defensemen, and I get that. We saw a lot of insurance in case Quinn is out of here. Yeah, I get that as well. It's clear that Byram, having the skill set that he has, being able to play the right side, and I think also that he's a British Columbian and played for the Giants, is probably influencing some of the yes vote as well.
Yeah. I think that it's an intriguing name. He's got some ties, obviously, and it pulls on the heartstrings maybe for a segment of the fan base, but it's a forced acquisition, I think. It requires a few other dominoes to fall if you acquire him.
It's a nice to do, not a need to do.
Yeah.
Errors and omissions, and Blake just got it all wrong on the plane. The plane.
I said Saudi. It was a Qatari gift to Trump.
A gift from the Qataris to Donald J. Trump. Now do foci or foci?
Both are apparently
acceptable.
And it's with
but
one.
You misspelled it.
It's just the one I.
One I.
I could have sworn it was.
So it's FOCI.
CI. And
you're sure about that?
And I hate Yerke so much because he provided more than one source. Because as he said, I didn't want you to say
that's right.
Webster's is not a good enough source.
Well, hey, I have argued that as well. We are aligned on that, Blake, and in some cases against Yerke. We are a Commonwealth nation. We are the Oxford English.
Yes.
We are not Webster's.
Yeah.
And really, this one is inescapable. You just got it wrong.
To quote Yerke, I even provided two sources so you couldn't play the, quote, I don't recognize Webster's card, end quote.
Yes.
And Yerke, I feel seen.
He's learned from, And he has learned from previous arguments.
Yes.
It's going to be it's only getting more difficult to win one on Yerke going forward.
It's true.
We wish him and all of you well. Thank you for joining us, connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific times. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.